Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to PrestaShop Project Live Update. We are here for the fourth time of the year. It's April already, and we have our fourth session. And my name is Christian Podemski. I'm tech evangelist at PrestaShop Project. And today with me, I have Pablo Borowicz, who is VP of Open Source at PrestaShop. And as always, we have some interesting things to show you. First of all, as always, I will present you with the event rules. Then we go quickly through two new releases of PrestaShop 8, two patch versions of PrestaShop 8. And then we will have quite a big news regarding the project and project organization. Pablo will present how the new organization of the project will look like in the future, in the very near future. And then, if there will be time, I will present you with some of the developer documentation improvements because we did a lot of good stuff when it comes to the developer documentation. I presented you with some changes last month, but there are plenty of new improvements which I would like to show you. But let's start with the event rules. First of all, please use the chat to ask questions. As always, there is a little delay between what you see and what I see, so please don't wait until the end of the stream to post your questions. Ask them as soon as possible. This event is about the PrestaShop open source project. It is not about PrestaShop company and product solutions and so on and so forth. This event is public and it is being recorded, so you will have a chance to watch the replay on YouTube. And last but not least, please be nice to each other and abide by the code of conduct of the project. Now let's go to the project news. I will start with quick news about two new releases for the PrestaShop, PrestaShop 8. Two new patch versions are now available. 8.02 and 8.03 were both released last month, or I think it was last month, and they fix over 25 bug fixes. There are some important fixes related to module upgrades, to core upgrades, and web services, as well as some security improvements. So if you use PrestaShop 8, be sure to upgrade to 8.03. And spoiler alert, there will be 8.04 and 1789 in a couple of days. For more details, you can follow those links. I will obviously, of course, share with you presentation after the live update, so you can click all the links that we have in the presentation. But now let's speak about new organization for the project. I will invite Pablo Borowicz on the stage so he can share with you very exciting news about project's organization. Hi, Pablo.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Christian. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, I'm leaving you on the stage, so feel free to present us with the new organization for the project.
Perfect. Thank you, Christian. So I have great news for everyone. Let's start with one of the best ones, at least for me. So the number of community contributions is growing across the project year after year for the past 6 years or so. And the current trend for 2023 is also very promising. I think we're going to reach the 1,000 mark this year. So great news in terms of collaboration from the community. Of course, these numbers don't include what PrestaShop company does. It's other contributors to the project that we are counting. But of course, what we want is to help the community continue getting involved in the project and have this trend going upwards and upwards in the future. But of course, there's always barriers for contribution. Only a tiny fraction of the ideas that people have and that people share even end up becoming part of the project. So our challenge here is how to help those ideas, at least the good ideas, to end up becoming part of the project, which is becoming a code that can be merged into the project. So contributions must, like any if you get like a commercial parallel to this, goes through a funnel, a conversion funnel. You get lots of ideas, many of them who are very, very interesting, that people get in their heads. The first thing is that you have to put them into words and share those through feature requests or issue reports. And then they need to go through a second level of this funnel, which is to have their feature or the solution that they find to a given problem accepted as the right solution. Then they need to go to a third level, which is to actually code that solution and create a pull request. And the final and hardest part is to have that pull request verified and merged. And only after a contribution has gone through all these stages, many of the contributions stop at a given point in this funnel. Only if they go through all these stages, they can actually provide value to the project, which is improving the software. So our challenge is to help people go through all these stages. The number one problem that is reported by contributors who struggle with getting their contribution included in the project is the time to decision. And there are many decisions to be made. As if we go back to this funnel, there are decisions to be made whether the feature should be part of the project or not, whether the implementation or at least not the implementation, but the how this feature works with the rest of the software, or whether the behavior that is chosen is the right one for the project or not. Then there are the implementation details, like you should do it like in this class or with this property or in this algorithm. And the final one is making a decision whether the solution works well enough or not to be to be qualified as a quality solution. So there are many decisions. There are lots of activity, and the more there is activity, the more decisions need to be made. And if the number of people making decisions is limited, then we get a problem. This is the reason why many decisions take a very long time to be made. It's because there are lots of decisions to be made at very little people time to make them. If we have a look at the current situation in the project, for technical decisions like architecture choices, implementation choices, we do have project maintainers, which include an important share of maintainers are employees of the company. For product UI, UX decisions like specifications, like the color of buttons and so on, wordings, those are decisions that are currently made by product managers, designers, wording managers, people who are employed by the company. For quality assessment decisions like the quality process, the triage process for issues, for example, and even validation of PRs, those are made by QA specialists from the company. And when it comes to strategy and governance decisions like general orientation of the project, how often do we release versions? When more than one choice is available, which one of those choices in terms of whether we should do this or that, or whether this guy should join the project or not, there's no clear individual that has the last word on those decisions, and that is a problem, as we all see. So the first problem is that the only role that is open to community right now is the one for maintainers. Maintainers can only make decisions in terms of technical stuff. The other kinds of decisions are only made by company people. So the only way to make more decisions is to hire more people, and the company doesn't have unlimited resources. So basically, inevitable truth is that without community help, we're going to find ourselves limited in terms of the number of decisions that can be made. The second problem, as I said before, is that there's no clarity in terms of who makes these very important decisions. So we set up to find solutions for those problems. And this is work that this is a project that we worked on for several months and took several months extra to have to align the different people, the different stakeholders, until I got to the point that I can share this with you. So I'm happy to announce that we have a new organization with the objective to accelerate decision making and to enable more and better contributions from the community. So this organization has three objectives. The first one is to clarify who makes decisions, because how can I say this? The clearer it is to identify who has to make a decision, the easier it is to get in touch with that person or people to get them to have to make a statement on that decision. If we don't know who needs to make a decision, then we need to figure out how we're going to make that decision. So that is a problem. The second objective is to facilitate the integration of community members into the decision-making process. As I said before, if we want to make more decisions, we need more people. How can we find more people? We reach out to you, to the community. And the final objective is to simplify the process of making a decision. We figured out that some of our processes for making decisions are extremely complicated and require a high degree of cooperation that we cannot easily achieve. For example, a voting process for a large number of people requires many people to agree. So there's a sort of immobility if there is no consensus, or if one guy says, I don't agree. The second one is a question of availability. So the more people need to pronounce themselves, the longer it takes to make a decision. And for the decision-making processes that are not defined, we usually tend to wait until we figure out the perfect process before a decision is made. So this is something that we want to change. So let's start with our new organization. This organization turns around what we name domain councils. Each domain council owns its own domain, for example, tech. Its purpose is to produce guidelines and recommendations for contributors to follow. So basically make decisions and write them down as best as they can, so that they don't have to pronounce themselves on every single decision that needs to be made in that domain. So there's a trace of past decisions. They're only summoned when a decision is needed. There might be some situations where a decision in that domain needs to be made, but there's already guidelines and recommendations in that respect, so they don't need to pronounce themselves on every single choice. And for some choices, they can delegate to subgroups or to different groups of people. So this domain council owns its domain organization and the processes within it. So, for example, if we take the tech council, they could have a subgroup called committers that can review pull requests, and only when there's an architecture choice to be made, they summon the tech council to pronounce themselves on that subject. Other domain councils like product will probably work differently, and the interesting part of this is that instead of us saying, okay, each domain council will organize themselves in such and such way, we'll leave it to the domain councils to choose how they can organize themselves better to respond to their own difficulties or scenario or domain characteristics. So there are different kinds of organizations that they can choose from and work it out on their own. Each domain council has a lead who ensures coherence across the domain, so that there's no stalemate between peers that don't agree with each other. Sorry, they can veto or override a decision if it's necessary. A decision that is made by the other members, of course, using it sparingly only when necessary. So it's more like a leader rather than a dictator, or at least that's the way I see it. Council members can participate in more than one council. So for example, a contributor that has sufficient trust and reputation to work both on the tech council and the product council can sit in both. And to simplify expectations, membership to a council is invite only, so you can't really run to be part of a council, but it's based on trust and reputation. So basically, if you get seen and people trust you and your reputation precedes you, then you might probably get invited into the council. So it's basically a way of recognizing people for their skills, for their reputation, but also because we trust that that people within councils will work together to reach common objectives. So we are creating 4 councils, as I said before: technical, product council, quality council, and a new one also that is called leadership council, that basically takes over the structure that we had before for this pretty much the same domain. So technical council owns architecture choices, design decisions, implementation decisions, etc. This one replaces the current maintainers group. So it's essentially the same thing with a different name and more autonomy. And the newest is that it's going to be led by Jonathan Lelier, who is a well-known developer in the company, a maintainer currently. So he's going to lead this technical council. The product council, which takes over the group of product managers and similar activities that were currently working on specifications, UI, UX guidelines, wording, etc. It will be made initially. It will include initially the current product managers, UX designers, wording managers, so the people currently doing it, and it will be led by Fabien Vallon, who is a lead product manager at PrestaShop. The quality council will follow the same structure as the product council, so same perimeter as the quality assessment group that currently exists, so includes current QA members, is led by Robin, who is QA manager at PrestaShop, and the new leadership council that takes over all these roles that were the ownership, that didn't have any ownership right now, or at least not a clear ownership, like journal orientation, release management, conflict management, and also is the one that nominates leads in the other councils. And this council is composed by the current council leads, so Jonathan, Fabien, Robin, a couple key people from the company, and myself, who is going to be leading this group. So this is the initial organization that can evolve, of course. And we create this so that we now have organizations, groups of people that can be joined by community members. Because if you had to be an employee to join them, then they were closed to community members. By creating this structure, we can include community members in other roles than maintainership. There's also a structure in terms of overseeing. This structure allows us to include as many people as we need in councils, while ensuring a coherence and a common orientation across all those councils. So this means that the leadership council is overseeing what the other councils decide. The leadership council is composed by the leaders from those councils, so there will be an agreement between those leaders in terms of which decisions are made. So this allows us, for example, to avoid the technical council going in a different direction than the product council, for example. And councils can have their own subgroups, as I said before. There are committers, and the technical council decides how committers are named, in the same way that the product council might have, for example, working groups for different features, and they can decide who gets to work in those working groups, even if those people don't actually belong to the product council. For example, let's say that the community is starting to work on a given feature, and this feature gets traction and many people get invested in it. They will have to make choices, and they will have to make decisions in terms of how this feature is going to be included in the software. For that to work, they will consult with previous decisions made by the product councils. So they already should have some guidelines. For example, let's say buttons are blue and they need to be put in the upper right part of the back office. So they do have already some guidelines to work independently. In terms of how invoicing works, the product council is probably the best group to decide on that, and how this feature will interact with invoicing, for example. That perhaps is some decision that can be delegated to that working group composed by people from the community that can work independently to come up with a solution. In the same spirit, the Quality Council could have QA analysts that validate pull requests by following the test scenarios that were predefined by the Quality Council. So the guys testing PRs don't necessarily have to belong to the Quality Council to have this right to be allowed to help within this role, because the scenarios have been decided by this trusted group, which is the Quality Council. And this is made in part to facilitate the integration of community members into active roles within the project. So roles where you can help out unblock contributions without being included directly into a decision-making role, which requires more trust and more responsibility. So this way, we are creating or at least this is the intention, to create like a path to include community members in roles with lower stakes, so that they can be more easily included into the project. And as we work together and get to know each other, and if we trust each other, then we can include those people into the council if it's needed and if this person so chooses. For this collaboration to work without anyone needing to impose their view on the other, we need some kind of common culture of sorts, which is what we call the working principles. We have 5 that I noted here. There are some others that are minor, and I didn't think it was so important to speak right now. The first one is that collaboration should be based on goodwill and trust and convergence towards common goals. Basically, if we don't agree on the general orientation of the project, it's going to be problematic for us to work together. So we need to agree first that that we want the best for the project, that we generally agree, or we will try to do our best to agree into the general direction, and we will trust each other that we are working on the best interest of the project and not necessarily our own. The second one is that admittance in a group or a council is mainly based on trust, on reputation, and on engagement. This means that we need to know each other to be able to work together. So it's not that like someone who arrives one day, the next day can join a council, no matter if it's the best developer in the world. We need to trust each other. We need to get to know each other before. Reputation is also very important because, for example, when in a company you hire a person to work with you, there's usually an interview. There's maybe, if it's a technical role, there's probably going to be a test, and this is a way to build trust on that person. So you say, okay, if this guy managed to pass this test, it means that he knows what he's doing. So I trust him I trust his skills because he has proven that he knows what he's doing. And this is, of course, something that isn't built overnight. Engagement as well, because it's no use having a person in a council if this person never participates in discussions and is just there for show. The third working principle is to have the leanest processes as possible. One of the first things that I insisted on is to avoid creating processes beforehand. So let's try and not get ahead of ourselves. Just set up the responsibility, trust each other to work well, and let people organize themselves before trying to impose a process on them. If we trust each other, if we are good-willing, it should work out fine. The fourth one is a concept that I borrowed from the Apache organization, which is called lazy consensus. It means that instead of looking for everyone to agree, we're going to look out for trust-based consensus in terms of people have a fixed amount of time to pronounce themselves, and if they don't say anything, then it's a tacit approval. This will help us significantly to accelerate decision making because we won't have to wait for people to say something before a decision can be made. So they do have a time frame to submit their opinion if they need to, but if they don't, then it's a go. And the last one is having the humility to accept that we don't know everything, that we can make mistakes, but the important part is to be able to learn from those mistakes and adapt. So we don't know, uh, we cannot know everything in advance. So try new stuff, see what happens, and then adapt to the observation. Those are the principles that we have chosen to delegate as much work as possible to group members and to allow them to work independently. The key advantages that we think we're going to get from this organization, the first one is having a clear decision-making structure, which is going to help us make it easier to identify decision makers and reach to them when we need a decision to be made. An easier onboarding of community members because we have new roles that are open to contributors that were closed before to them, like in product roles, in QA roles, for example. And because we created an organization that can be broken down in different responsibility levels that can include community members, even if we don't trust them completely to become decision makers yet. And the third one is to help us accelerate decision making process progressively, thanks to simpler processes, different from the ones that we had until now. And because we expect to have more people, community people, to make them. So what's next? We're going to publish an official announcement on our blog in the next few days, presenting these groups, everything that I explained just now, and the names of the people who are initially going to be part of those groups. We're going to roll out the council's function, so we're going to kick off the functioning of those councils during the next few weeks. And we expect that in the following months, we will be able to launch project initiatives. This is something that I have already hinted about in different times during the last year. What we want to do is, and this is another reason why this new organization is key, is that we want to encourage, we want to empower the community to work as independently as possible in these subjects which are important for them, but that we cannot handle ourselves at the company because we already have too many things in our hands and we can't do anything ourselves, not at the same time. So there are some subjects which are important for the community, and we want to empower the community to be able to solve them or tackle them on their own with some guidance, but without becoming a burden for them to succeed into getting into getting those feature or those subjects fixed in the project. So that's everything for me. Christian, perhaps you want to share one or two questions.
Yeah, thank you, Pablo. I think it is a great moment for the project. So if anyone from the community has any questions, please feel free to ask them on chat. But I do prepare a few questions. I will challenge you a bit. So first of all, you mentioned project initiatives, and I will not be asking about those because we will have some more details in upcoming months. But where we could check about councils and who is exactly in them. Do you have some plans to host any sub page on the project's website where we can see the the council members, not the project members in general, the council members?
Yeah. We already have a page in the project that lists all the project members and their current roles. And this is, of course, going to be updated with the new councils. It's not going to change that much because the organization has been thought to be built around the status quo or in some way. But of course, the idea wasn't just to change everything, but to just set up a structure and then be able to let us be able to onboard new people. So we're going to update this page with a new structure and with the names of the initial members. Remember, this is a starting point. It's not a finish line. We're going to invite some community members that we have already identified as potential members in the new councils. But of course, we need to discuss this with them before we announce this. And of course, this is also going to be shared in the announcement.
Okay, all right. So the next question is about those who want to leave the project, but for those who wants to leave the project, I think it's clear that they would leave the councils automatically. But what about people who leave the company? Are they removed automatically from the council, or it's up to them to be engaged in the project further within their new adventure? What do you think?
It depends. It's a very good question. I don't have a definite answer. So again, humility to not know everything, or at least to recognize that I don't know everything. I think that depending on the role, there are people that can continue having their seat in a domain, depending on how much they will be engaging in the project. For example, let's say there's a council leader that leaves the company, because all council leaders right now are employee members, are members of the company. So if one leaves the company, that doesn't necessarily mean that they lose their position. It depends on what their plans. For example, if they will be focusing on something else, then they probably won't even have a place in the council, because they just won't be active anymore. If they continue to be active and they continue working in the same general direction as agreed, so remember the working principles, convergence towards common goals, I don't see that necessarily as a problem. Again, if there's disagreement, the structure is made so that agreement is found eventually. So I suppose it depends on the scenario.
All right. So I will challenge you a bit about the leads of councils, because right now, as you noticed, as we know, all the leads are employees of PrestaShop company. So let's imagine that one of the leads is leaving the company and there's a replacement for him or her. You said something like that there's no way for a new person to become a lead. Is that a thing when it comes to leads, from company? Will that be, a case where, for example, we have a new, I don't know, technical lead or somebody who is who were from the company, and there's a new person joining the company who is a top product manager or something. Will the lead be somebody from the council, or the lead will be appointed by the company?
I'm not sure I follow. So
let's imagine that one of the council leaders is leaving the company because he leaves the company. That's it. And there's a replacement for him or her. So there's a new top product manager, top developer, and so on and so forth in the company. who will be the next lead for the council? This person or somebody who were in the council in the past?
It depends on what happens with the previous lead. To me, of
All
course,
right. Okay.
if there is a disagreement, then the leadership council will appoint a new leader because of this disagreement.
Okay,
But
yeah.
you
Daniel
don't need to.
rephrased the question a bit. If I'm the second biggest boss in a team, will I become the leader in the council if the PS paid leader leaves? Basically.
Well, basically, there's no second biggest boss. There is one boss.
Okay, all right.
For so basically, when one leader leaves, uh, the the project basically. So that's the scenario. Um, then the leadership committee appoints a new leader,
Okay, all right. Yeah.
and it can be somebody that's already in the group, but it also can be somebody that is new to the group, and that's a reserved right.
Okay, I think this required clarification. You said something about not having a new people in councils and so on and so forth. So it's better to clarify that. I know that you wanted to make the processes light. It's not a government; it's a governance of the project. But we want to be transparent. Community wants to know not who made the decision. They would like to know also who made the decision and why this decision has been made. So the question is whether we plan to have some meeting minutes or some sort of form to document those decisions like other open source projects do.
Yeah, it's definitely an option. I haven't thought about it. I again, I try not to think, not to overthink in terms of what's the process that councils will follow. I expect councils to self-organize by following the general um, orientation. So basically, we are creating those councils to include people. If we become completely closed, then people won't be able to join. So it goes against the objective. So I think that being transparent and being inclusive is definitely something that we will have to ask from councils. I don't know yet the exact form that this transparency is going to happen, whether it's going to be open meetings or some reserved meetings and then open like office hours, or just minutes from meetings, or something else. We'll figure out as we go.
Okay, sounds good. We don't have any more questions, so I think if there will be any questions, we can simply pass them to you or to somebody else in upcoming days. And yeah, thank you, Pablo. I will now continue with the demos.
Thank you.
All right. So Pablo spoke about the project organization. We do have a plan for one more demo today. After this amazing news from Pablo, I wanted to share with you a few things, interesting things regarding the developer documentation. As I said, I showed you some of the improvements last month, where we improved some things in the documentation. But today, I would like to. I have pleasure to inform you about more improvements coming to the developer documentation. First of all, I will start with improved search of the developer documentation. But for starters, I will share you the link on chat. So to start, we analyzed the most frequently searched items that were without results. Thanks to the usage of Algolia doc search in the developer documentation, we managed to get information about those phrases that you type into the search bar, that were completely without any results. And thanks to analysis of these results, we managed to improve the search of the developer documentation. So now we have a better precision when searching. There is a new mechanism, tags mechanism, that allows us to basically create aliases between what is in the developer documentation and Algolia's count versus what you've been searching for using the search bar. Plus, we improved how you can search for hooks, because we noticed that one of the most commonly searched items in the developer documentation are hooks. Basically, you search for hook names for existing hooks and their implementation, and so on and so forth. So I will give you a few examples how it works right now. For example, better precision when searching. It means that before, if you searched for a list of hooks, the first result was about the page with list of hooks on the PDF page, which was not really convenient. And by tweaking some settings in Algolia crawler configuration, we managed to give a higher priority to the most commonly searched pages. For example, list of hooks is now a list of hooks page is now number one result if you search for a list of hooks, which is obviously a huge improvement before versus what we had in the past. Secondly, we noticed that very often developers search for things like form helper, list helper, instead of using their regular names like helper form, helper list, and so on and so forth. So it's a great improvement, and we plan to analyze the missing results from Algolia more often, so we can manage to add more tags in the future to some pages to create aliases between pages and the results for the search results. And last but not least, hooks are now available directly in the search results. So if you, for example, search for action validate order, you will have an information about hooks in the search pop-up. As you can see on the screenshot, I searched for action validate order and I have information about this hook. I can click instantly to read more about this hook, to have parameters details, to see where the hook is being called, or for example, for those hooks who have example implementation in place, I can directly click on the example implementation result to see the example code that I could use in this hook. And last but not least, when it comes to the search, it's a great addition added by our technical writer, Thomas. He managed to create a script which basically allows you to search for dynamic hooks as well. Dynamic hooks are those where you don't really have a full name of the hook in the documentation, because one part of the hook is dynamic. For example, action, name of the object model, update, and so on and so forth. On the screenshot that you can see on the presentation, a developer searched for action product form builder modifier. So there are no results for this hook because it doesn't really exist in the documentation per se, but there is a matching dynamic hook that is now being displayed for developers, which should be really convenient for those who search for dynamic hooks. And we noticed through the analysis of the most frequently searched items that it's the popular case scenario where developer is searching for action something something, where it is a dynamic hook, and before there were no results. Right now it works as expected. So the search in the developer documentation is much better now. We will happily read your feedback about those improvements, and we will keep analyzing the results of Algolia doc search, so we can improve the results and the developer experience in our documentation further. And I would like to also mention new things in the docs. I see that links are not really visible right now, but I will make sure to share the presentation later in YouTube comments and in the summary article on our build blog. But there's a few interesting things in the documentation. that have been added recently. First of all, there's a documentation. Oh, I should say that those new elements are based on the analysis that we made a few weeks ago. So those all elements that you see on the list are based on the missing search results from the developer documentation. So, for example, we noticed that a lot of developers search for get module link or get image link and so on and so forth. So we decided to document the link component, link class, where you can find a few examples of how to use this class in your modules. The same goes for the local component, which is widely used in the core and in native modules to format price with your currency and localization settings. We also improved documentation for legacy helpers, helper form and helper list, to manage what was missing in the search results in the past. The same goes for the improved docs for the DB component. There are more examples. There's a better wording. There's a better content for Algolia to index properly this page to make searching the documentation easier. There is one amazing example that were commonly asked by the community, and it was highly anticipated an example by the community. It is about hook module roots, which basically allows you to create new routes in the PrestaShop application to override some of the dispatcher base routes directly from your module. So there's a dedicated page on the list of hooks, which basically provides you with all the necessary information how to work with the hooks, as well as the fully working example module, which uses hook module routes. So you can have a look at the documentation plus an example module that was created especially for this purpose. And soon we will have a documentation for yet another frequently searched thing in the developer documentation, which is PrestaShop collection class. And other improvements that I would like to mention, the one that is now live in the documentation is that when you change the version of the documentation, you stay on the same page. It was reported by Mikael, if I recall correctly. So Mikael, thank you for your suggestion. It was definitely worth implementing. So if you, for example, browsing 1.7 documentation, if you browse a basic section, then you change the documentation to V8 because it's the most recently released version, you stay on the same page. Before, you were redirected to the homepage, which was really annoying behavior. So it's a great improvement. Thank you, Mikael, for suggesting this feature, and Thomas for implementing it. And soon we'll release a completely improved upgrade guide. So this will be a documentation how to work with auto upgrade module, how to upgrade using local archive option, how to upgrade using CLI. I noticed that there were a lot of questions on how to use CLI upgrade mechanism. I wasn't aware that there's a lot of developers who manage, for example, 100 stores plus, and there's the only way for them to upgrade those stores is by using CLI method. So the CLI method from the auto upgrade module is now fully documented and ready for review in the improved upgrade guide. So if you want to read the refreshed upgrade guide, be sure to go to the docs repository in PrestaShop organization to the pull request about this feature. And the same goes for the new product page extendability. It is about the migration guide from how to migrate your solution from the old product page to the new product page, which will be released together with 8.1 for new installations. And this is about how to migrate your hooks that you could use on the old product page versus how you could implement those hooks that were removed from the old page using new ones and that were added to the new product page. So basically, it's a full tutorial and full example module on how to use new hooks versus how to use old hooks, and mapping of old hooks to the new hooks, full migration guide how to make your modules and solutions compatible with the new product page. So those two things are coming to the documentation, and changing of the version and staying on the same page is already live. And that's basically it when it comes to the developer documentation improvements. We now will have a quick question and answer session. So Pablo, I will ask you back on the stage. Hello again.
Hey.
I don't see any questions. I see one message from Loic. All right. Yeah, jumping on the multiple page to have the list of hooks. Yeah, it was really annoying. I will show you one thing. I will show you all one tip how to improve your experience with the developer documentation. So I will share my screen. So if you use the search in the developer documentation a lot, there's a feature in Agolia that allows you to add certain or search results to favorites. So for example, I very often look for the list of hooks or how the PHP compatibility chart looks on the developer documentation. So for example, if I remove this result, if I refresh the page, and now if I search for list of hooks, I do have it as a first result, so I can click on it. But if I don't want to type the list of hooks over and over again, I can just go back to the search and click this star icon there, and it goes to my favorites. So every time I open the search bar, I will have those favorite results in my saved to my browser's settings. So it is really useful. So if you have some pages that you always looking for in the documentation, it's worth saving them to the favorites. I hope it helps.
I didn't know that feature. It's great.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, it's great feature. It's great feature. I noticed that I noticed it while we were doing analysis with Thomas about those missing results from the developer documentation search. So it is really a great feature, very, very helpful.
Nice.
Right. So I don't see any more questions. So I think we can call it a day, and we will see you all in May. So Pablo, once again, thank you for for presenting this exciting news for the project, and we are all looking forward to read the article on the build blog with official announcement.
Right. Thank you, Christian, and thank you everyone for joining us today, and see you soon.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Bye.